In 2016, the psychedelic rock space was at critical mass, especially in Perth, where about every 4 days, somebody was starting a Tame Impala rip-off band. Despite this, Psychedelic Porn Crumpets broke through with their debut album, High Visceral Part 1, declaring a love for monster riffs, references to just about every substance in the psychedelic playbook, and breakdowns that probably could have been shorter, but weren't. This is Engineering the Sound, High Visceral Part 1, and today we're going to be joined by Jack McEwen from Psychedelic Porn Crumpets to dive into the making and recording of this classic album.
It's literally the same primitive setup as I did for the first record, just the Focusrite little Scarlet box. I used a SingStar mic for High Visceral Part 1. I didn't have a microphone, so I knew Ava had SingStar, who's my sister. So I went home.
Tell me about this house you were living and recording in.
It was like this party house in Southport Street, so it's literally just down the road from here in Leederville. So, but they used to have gigs there like all the time. And King Gizzard actually played there in this barn. And
that's awesome.
And the guy who basically converted the barn into a studio, he'd hung up all these sheets like basically on the outside of the room and kitted it with loads of mattresses in the ceiling so it was soundproof.
Necessity breeds creativity, and on Jack's minimal setup in this Perth party house / trip den, he set out to record High Visceral Part 1.
We'd all sort of done a bit of like home job recording and had Ableton, so it was really easy where we could send each other like bits and pieces. So I think I had this mic actually. This was one of the Audio Technica ones that we used for guitars, and then we had an SM57, just a classic guitar setup. We bought this Zoom handheld recorder. That was what we first started recording with, and there was a function on the side. It was obviously like if it's too loud you could bring it down 48 or go up 48, but it was the greatest overdrive sound I've ever heard. So you put your guitar straight at the bottom, put it up 48 decibels or whatever, and it was like whee! For the drums we'd put it under a pillow on the sofa, because that was the way the cymbals didn't bleed into the mic. We got really good at putting the sofa down perfectly onto this like microphone. But yeah, from there, I think it was easier to go into Ableton.
Ableton is a production software that you'll more often find under the hood of EDM artists or DJs. It's a really powerful creative tool. As offbeat a choice as it was for a rock band, it allowed Jack and the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets to stretch their sound into wild new dimensions.
With Ableton, you can exactly do that. It's like you have your waveform there, which is for you to manipulate however you want. You can convert it into MIDI, so you can just be like, let's make the guitar the drums, or let's make the vocals like this syncopated, ridiculous rhythm.
So Jack, definitively, can you tell me which of the songs were recorded on a SingStar microphone?
Cornflake, Marmalade and Cubensis, and I'm pretty sure Gallup Southport. Man, those things are great. They're like have so much range, but they've cut out all the highs and lows anyway, because they're just made for karaoke speakers. So they're perfect for a voice, do you know what I mean? And rather than having these where like, or these mics for instance, where they capture everything and then you have to mix them down, SingStar mics, man, already got it. They're already mixed before you plugged it in.
And these effects, are these onboard Ableton effects or something else you got your hands on?
No, so I got Guitar Rig, so that's what I've been using sort of. So that thing is like, it's kind of like Amplitude. The vocals, for instance, with Guitar Rig, it sounds really good if you just turn off the cabs.
Even though Jack talks about using Guitar Rig, a sort of software that simulates popular guitar amps, on his vocals here, it was also his go-to for creating the massive guitar sounds throughout High Visceral Part 1.
When we thought about the tones more, or guitar tones, it was kind of a mix between Guitar Rig and just what pedals we had. So a lot of the guitars are DI on that. It kind of made that record, I suppose, a more fluid listen. Instead of having, the choice of a million different ways to record a guitar tone or overdrive, it was like, that's what it sounds like, because that's what we can record. So.
And Jack, are there any moments on High Visceral Part 1 that you're particularly proud of still?
Yeah, I think for me, like Denmark, that almost did make it to the record. And I showed my now girlfriend Jo, like when we'd finished it, I was like, I wrote this song today. And then she was like, oh, okay. Like, and I hadn't even been talking to her, but I hadn't showed anyone anything, but I was like, for some reason I was like, oh, this girl, I'll show this girl Denmark. And then she fell madly in love with me, and I win. Of all the songs, I listened back to High Visceral, the actual track. I think that's my favorite. There was a song called Binge, which was the opening track, and it led into Cornflakes so well, but for like the last 10 seconds of the song. And I remember showing the album to a bunch of people, and it was just these 3 big chords going, gah, 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 and then it'd be like, da, 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 da. But like on the gah, the last chord, it would just have this like guitar kind of thing, which just sounded huge. It was like a day before we were about to put it onto like out. We're like, let's get rid of Binge, and which I think no one would have got past that song, like in hindsight. Now we're now living in a bad lo-fi dystopian future where kids like me with no intelligence at all are now being interviewed about an album they made in their bedroom. It's so I've ruined jobs for everybody. Every music producer in the world hates people like this.